Alright, so this is a demonstration of how to create a scatterplot using Excel, and then also we'll do a little bit on how to analyze that scatterplot. So let's assume we've already got some data. Your first step obviously is to collect your data, and then once you've collected your data, you want to enter it into Excel in a format like this. So you've got one measurement here. In this case we've got height in centimeters, and these are all our height measurements. And then you've got your other measurement here, which is in this case arm span, and then again all the measurements for arm span. So in this case I think we've got about 30, we've got about 30 points. Okay, so once you've got all your data in Excel like this in a table, the next thing is just to select it all. So we're just going to draw a box around the whole lot. There we go. Okay, once that is all highlighted, we go to the Insert tab of the ribbon, so up here, Insert. And then under the Charts section, we've got this one here, which is for scatter plots. And we're going to select this one, which doesn't have any lines. So it should only have dots, no lines. And there it is, there's our scatter plot. Now the first thing we want to do is actually move this chart to its own sheet. So we click on Move Chart up here in the ribbon, and we go to New Sheet and click OK. There we have it. So now we have here our chart. Okay, you'll notice that a title has been automatically created, but this is not the correct title that we want. Let's have a look back at our data. We had, if I go back up, we had height and arm span. So we want to say, for our title, if we just double click on it and select it all, we can go graph of height against arm span, and that will be our title. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to add labels to our two axes. So we've got the numbers down here on our axes, but we don't have any labels. We must have labels. So the way we do that is we click on this little plus sign here, and we tick the box next to axes titles. So we just tick that box, and you'll see here that the two axes titles have appeared, but they're not, they have no relevant text in them. So now we have to enter the text. You'll see here that our first column, this column here, is height, and our second column is arm span. So our first column, height, is the one that goes automatically onto the horizontal axis. So we type in here height. And key thing to remember is to add units to your axes. So your axes labels should have a label saying what it is, and a unit for that label. So in this case it's centimeters. So we've got height on the horizontal axis, and we'll have arm span. So arm span, again centimeters, on the vertical axis. Okay, so we've got our title, we've got our horizontal and vertical axes labels. Now the next thing you'll notice is that our scatter data, our points, are only taking up quite a small proportion of the whole area of the graph. So we need to fix this. The way that we do that is we click on Add Chart Element, which is up here. So Add Chart Element, and then you'll see we've got Axes and More Axes options. That will bring up this toolbar here on the right. And what we want to do is, you'll see here, so here we've selected our horizontal axes, and you'll see that we've got minimum and maximum. So these are what are currently the range of values that are shown on our graph. So we've got 200 and 0, see here 200 and 0. So because our points only go down to about 120, we can actually make 120 our minimum. So let's do that. We select minimum and go 120 and press enter. See, what that's done is it's changed our axes so that the axes start now at 120 and go up to, it's changed it to 190 because that's on auto. So that fixes our horizontal axes. In fact, we can change our horizontal maximum to 180 because our points only go up to 180. There we go. So back on the axes. So now we've corrected our horizontal range, so our points are taking up the whole of the horizontal range, but our vertical range is still not great because we've got all this area down here which isn't being used. So we can actually, if we click on our a vertical axis, and on axis options we click on here axis options, and axis options, and let's change our minimum to, what can we change it to, 20. We can't really go too much beyond that because we've got this point here, and if we go any lower than, if we go to 40, we're going to lose that point. Okay, so that's really all we can do with our axes options. And that's our graph finished. There's more that we can do with it, but we don't need to at this stage. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to copy this from Excel into a Word document. So if you just select the whole graph, so you click up here somewhere so that the whole thing is selected, and you go to Home. Actually, sorry, you can just press, you can either click here and to copy, or you can just press Control-C. So let's click here to copy the graph. Okay, now I've got Microsoft Word open in another window, so I'll go to that. Here it is. And we're just going to paste that. So you can click Paste or Control-V. And there is our graph. Now the first thing we want to do, so firstly that is that's drawing a scatterplot. What I'm going to describe now is how we analyze the graph and write about it. So if you're just interested in drawing at this stage, then just pause the video here and create your scatterplots first, and then come back once you want to learn more about doing the analysis section. So the first thing we do with analysis is we want to draw a trend line, and the way we do that is we click on Insert up here, and we go to Shapes, and we select a line. Now you'll notice in our data that we have a few what we call outliers. This value, and these values are what we call outliers. They're separate from the rest of the data, and so we're actually going to ignore them when we draw our trend line. And you'll remember that a trend line, or a line of best fit, is a line that goes through the data in the same direction as the data. So it goes through the middle of the data and in the same direction. So we could draw a trend line something like this. You just click and drag to draw it. And that would give us a reasonable approximation of the trend of our data. Okay, so that's our trend line. Once you've done that, we then want to write about what we see or analyze our data. So let's just do a quick analysis section here. So if we just do a title analysis, and the first thing we write about is the type of relationship. So we would say that the type of relationship between height and arm span is linear in this case. And then for excellence, you would then go on to calculate the gradient. So you'd say that as height increases by 10 centimeters, arm span increases by, I don't know, whatever it is, 8 centimeters or whatever. In this case, I'm just going to say we can see this because the trend line changes at a constant rate, which is sufficient for a merit. The next thing we describe is the direction of the relationship. And we say the direction of the relationship between height and arm span is, in this case, positive. And we can see this because as height increases, so as we go in this direction here, from left to right, arm span also increases. So as height increases, arm span also increases. So as we're going across this way, arm span goes up as well. The last thing we describe is the strength of the relationship. I would say the strength of the relationship between height and arm span is moderate. We can see this because there is a moderate amount of scatter around the trend line. In this case, You could probably say moderate to strong. If you wanted to do that, you'd go moderate to strong, because they're actually reasonably close to the trend line, but we'll stick with moderate in this instance. Part of the reason that they look so close is that we've got a large amount of data that's a large amount of space that's not being used. So if we were to expand this to fill our whole graph, the points would actually look a bit further apart than they are now. And that is our analysis, or the basic part of it anyway. So the type of relationship, linear, the direction is positive, and the arm span is moderate. So the strength of the relationship is moderate, and we back up each statement with something, with evidence from our graph. So we justify it by saying, with reference to the graph. So we can see this because it changes at a constant rate, and so on.